In this video, I'll be looking at some of the strongest commons in the history of Magic. It'll mostly be a subjective ranking, factoring in tournament play and bannings. To qualify for this list, a card has to have been printed at common rarity in at least one set. Before we get started, if you're looking to buy Magic cards, just a reminder that you can use my discount code SERUMVISIONS to get 5% off your first purchase through Card Trader Zero. Just follow the link in the description. With that out of the way, let's dive into the list. Number 150, Ulamog's Crusher. Ulamog's Crusher is Pauper's closest thing to an Eldrazi Titan. It's an 8/8 with Annihilator 2, capable of winning games by itself in just one or two swings. This makes it one of the format's prime reanimation targets. That said, the Crusher provides no immediate value, and since it has a massive target on its back, it usually eats a removal spell in short order. Number 149, Stone Rain. Stone Rain offers a simple but incredibly mean effect at a very low cost. Requiring only a single red means it's very splashable, and costing 3 total means you can routinely cast this on turn 2 after a mana dork on turn 1. It's the backbone of Ponza in pre-modern, and a menace in Pauper land destruction decks. Number 148, Vines of Vastwood. Pump spells have existed forever, but very few function as both a combat trick and a pseudo counterspell. You can use Vines to give a creature a beefy +4/+4 boost, or you can hold it up as protection against removal, bounce, or targeted abilities. Infect in Modern weaponized it to an absurd degree. The card also has other more niche applications, since it doesn't actually grant hexproof, but rather simply says that target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control this turn. This means you can target your opponent's creatures with it to fizzle their own pumps, or their auras, or ephemerates, etc. Number 147, Pinnacle Killship. A more recent addition to the Commons with Too Much Text club, Pinnacle Killship has seen some use in Pauper because it functions as both removal and a threat. It's a spacecraft with Station 7 that says, when this spacecraft enters, it deals 10 damage to up to one target creature. Its stationed form is a 7/7 flyer, which is not too shabby. Costing exactly 7 generic mana means it fits nicely into Tron decks, and cascading into this off Maelstrom Colossus is totally busted. Number 146, Basilisk Gate. At first glance, Basilisk Gate hardly looks threatening. Granting a power and toughness boost at sorcery speed doesn't immediately jump off the page, and the card depends on other gates to function at all. Since most gates enter tapped, building around them slows your mana. On top of that, Basilisk Gate doesn't conveniently fix your colors on its own, and yet, despite all those apparent liabilities, Basilisk Gate has emerged as one of Pauper's defining utility lands, reshaping how mid-range creature strategies approach the late game. It transforms any creature on your board into a potential win condition. In that sense, it echoes the role Kessig Wolfrun once played in Standard, a mana sink that turned stalled boards into decisive swings. The difference is efficiency. Basilisk Gate's activation cost tops out at 2 mana, meaning you only need to commit 3 lands total to dramatically increase a creature's size. The trade-off is timing. Because it can only be activated before combat, you expose yourself to removal or unfavorable blocks after investing the mana. Nevertheless, what looks like a modest support land ends up functioning as a repeatable, low-cost finisher that demands respect every turn. Number 145, Young Wolf. Young Wolf is a 1/1 with Undying for a single green mana. If it dies without a +1/+1 counter on it, it returns to the battlefield with 1. That means your 1 mana investment effectively produces 2 bodies, first a 1/1, then a 2/2. That rate alone has earned the Wolf a place in Pauper, where its resilience supports mono-green aggro and Golgari sacrifice archetypes. However, its real appeal lies in its synergy with sacrifice and counter-based synergies in Modern, particularly Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. Yawgmoth's ability to sacrifice creatures while placing -1/-1 counters unlocks absurd interactions with Undying. You can sacrifice Young Wolf, have it return with a +1/+1 counter, then use Yawgmoth to place a -1/-1 counter on it. The counters cancel out, leaving it vulnerable to Undying again the next time it dies. With another Undying creature in play and a payoff like Blood Artist, this loop converts into card draw, board control, and eventually lethal damage. Number 144, Pestilence. Pestilence is a black enchantment that turns every spare mana into a wave of symmetrical damage. For a single black mana, it pings every creature and both players at once. As long as there's at least one creature on the battlefield, it sticks around, waiting for you to activate it again. That condition sounds restrictive, but in practice it gives the controller full agency. You choose when the damage starts and how far it goes. You can gradually shrink creatures over multiple activations, reset the battlefield entirely if things get out of hand, or simply pick off small threats while preserving your own sturdier creatures. And because the damage hits players too, Pestilence doubles as a surprise finisher. A stalled board can suddenly turn into lethal damage if enough black mana is available. Sometimes you clear blockers to push through combat, other times you just end the game without attacking at all. Number 143, Timberwatch Elf. One of the most annoying cards to play against. The activated ability scales absurdly fast in a deck that floods the board with elves, and once you pair it with untappers like Quirion Ranger, it starts producing free wins. Timberwatch Elf's capacity to snowball is one of the reasons elves decks remain a force in Pauper, despite their vulnerability to board wipes. Number 142, Terminate. Terminate was once the gold standard for removal efficiency. Being able to kill anything and shut down regeneration for just 1 black and 1 red was very impressive back in the day. Rakdos Midrange, Grixis Control, and Jund Shells ran this card for years. Number 141, Prophetic Prism. On a raw power level, Prophetic Prism doesn't look scary, but in Pauper this card has shaped entire mana bases. Prism fixes your mana while replacing itself immediately, which is exactly the kind of low opportunity cost role player that combo and Tron strategies thrive on. Tron, Jeskai Ephemerate, and various artifact engines have leaned on it to smooth draws, fix awkward color requirements, and enable loops with various blink effects. Prism isn't flashy, but its ubiquity across multiple metagames makes it one of the most format-defining commons ever printed. It even spent some time on the Pauper ban list. Number 140, Chainer's Edict. Chainer's Edict is a removal spell that scales from early stabilizer to late game blowout. Edict effects are already strong against hexproof creatures, tall singular threats, or Voltron strategies, but the flashback is what pushes this card over the top. Black Control, Dimir Terror, Orzhov Midrange, and even some Reanimator lists have relied on Chainer's Edict as repeatable removal that helps turn the tide once you've hit 7 mana. Number 139, Myr Enforcer. This creature is the classic affinity payoff, a 4/4 that frequently costs nothing. Artifact-heavy decks routinely cast it for 1 or 2 mana, sometimes even for free, making it one of the biggest early-game bodies available at common. It was a standard all-star in its time, and remains a force to be reckoned with in Pauper. There, Myr Enforcer helps keep Affinity at Tier 1 status, backed up by the likes of Thoughtcast, Galvanic Blast, and Artifact lands. It doesn't have evasion or tricks, but it doesn't need them. A free vanilla 4/4 is already enough. Number 138, Hopeless Nightmare. A new staple of the Pauper metagame, Hopeless Nightmare does several small things extremely well. It disrupts the hand early, it drains life, it triggers enchantment synergies, and later it can be sacrificed to Scry, which smooths your top decks in grindy games. In self-bounce decks, Hopeless Nightmare forces constant discard and life loss on the opponent, so much so that it was eventually banned from Standard. Number 137, Prismatic Strands. Preventing all damage from a chosen color, and then doing it again for free from the graveyard, is one of the most devastating ways to turn the tide of combat, or just fog your opponent. In Pauper, tokens, Boros Bully, Familiars, and white weenie decks rely on Strands as the perfect stabilizer. Its flashback cost, tapping an untapped white creature, also means you can use it while your lands are tapped out, which makes it one of the most powerful defensive tricks ever printed at Common. Number 136, Slippery Boggle. The namesake of an entire archetype. Once Slippery Boggle comes down on turn 1, it becomes the anchor for an Aura's strategy that snowballs extremely quickly. In formats like Pauper and Modern, Boggle's decks use it as the untouchable base for Rancor, Ethereal Armor, or Daybreak Coronet. Because your opponent can't interact with it using normal removal, they're forced into narrow answers like Edicts or Sweepers. Number 135, Fiery Temper. In Madness decks, Fiery Temper functions as Lightning Bolt copies 5 through 8. Discard spells like Faithless Looting turn it into a nearly free burn spell that slots perfectly into many red-heavy lists. It brings all the efficiency of a bolt while rewarding the shells built around enabling it. A core piece of Rakdos Madness decks in Pauper. Number 134, Glinthawk. Core Skyfish's bird cousin. Glinthawk lets you boomerang an artifact back to your hand for another round of value. It shines alongside the likes of Tithing Blade, Experimental Synthesizer, and Cryogen Relic, bouncing them, recasting them, and squeezing every drop of card advantage while landing a cheap 2/2 flyer in the process. In Pauper, this sequence alone powers entire archetypes. I should also give an honorable mention to Core Skyfisher, a creature that plays a similar role but can fit into way more archetypes. Number 133, Sneaky Snacker. This odd common from MH3 is a linchpin of the Madness burn decks in Pauper. Those decks never hardcast it. Instead, they discard the Snacker to draw effects like Faithless Looting or Cathartic Reunion, immediately returning the Snacker to the battlefield since they've drawn their third card for the turn. This means that the Snacker is fairly annoying to deal with, as they can always bring it back from the graveyard later if you kill it. Number 132, Murmuring Mystic. In any spell-dense deck, this creature becomes an army in a can. Every instant or sorcery creates a bird token, which means that if you untap with it, you're suddenly playing a token swarm strategy without dedicating slots to token matters. Izzet Control, Jeskai Ephemerates, Blue-White Familiars, and Blue Midrange lists have all used it as a finisher that naturally aligns with their game plan. It may be slower than the likes of Young Pyromancer, but the flying bodies matter tremendously in board stalls. Number 131, the Artifact Jewel Lands. This entire cycle quietly rewrote Pauper mana bases and significantly strengthened Affinity. Having a land that taps for 2 colors and counts as an artifact opens the door to an enormous range of synergies, and being indestructible made them both resilient and powerful alongside effects such as Cleansing Wildfire. Number 130, Street Wraith. One of the strongest examples of free deck thinning ever printed. This card became a multi-format role player long before it got downshifted to common. Cycling it for 2 life improves card quality, fuels graveyard synergies and Death's Shadow, and fills the yard for cards like Gurmag Angler and Living End. You see the Wraith in Modern Hollow One, Legacy Doomsday, and Pauper Cycling Storm. Number 129, Maelstrom Colossus. This is one of the cleanest large threats Tron has ever had at common. The Cascade is the key. It effectively turns your payoff creature into a 2-spell swing, often nabbing Prophetic Prism, Meldrifter, or even a removal spell to stabilize the board. Cascading into another threat off this can win games almost single-handedly. The Colossus generates immediate value, and its 7/7 body closes games quickly once you've seized control. Number 128. Glimpse the Impossible. This card sees a lot of play in Ruby Storm. For 3 mana, you get 3 Impulse draws, and then at end of turn, for each card remaining in exile, you put it into your graveyard and create an Eldrazi spawn token. So it's effectively some combination of card draw, ramp, and chump blockers that is very flexible, almost working like a modal spell. Number 127. Llanowar Elves. If you want to talk about commons that helped define the identity of an entire color, this is the starting point. Green's classic 1-mana ramp creature template begins here, and every subsequent mana dork is basically a descendant. Turn 1 elf means turn 2 3-drop, and that acceleration snowballs hard. Number 126. Nyxborn Hydra. Yet another pushed common from MH3. Ramp-focused shells like elves and Gruul monsters use it as a scalable threat, often hitting the battlefield as a 10/10 that demands an immediate answer. The trample matters a lot, and if you bestow it, it remains on the battlefield as a creature even if the creature it was enchanting dies, making it very tough to deal with. Number 125. Squadron Hawk. Back in its prime, Squadron Hawk was pretty formidable. You'd play one, fetch 3 others from your deck, and suddenly you had both board presence and built-in insurance against removal. It played beautifully with discard outlets and brainstorm effects, most infamously with Jace the Mind Sculptor, where you could brainstorm away extras, cast a new Hawk, and reload your hand like nothing happened. Equipping a sword to it then closed out games pretty fast. Though not seen much in Modern these days, the Hawk continues to put in results in Pauper, usually in Boros and White Weenie decks. Number 124. Tithing Blade. Edicts are crucial in Pauper because they swerve around hexproof like Slippery Boggle and cleanly answer lone finishes like Tolarian Terror. Tithing Blade checks all those boxes while also boosting your artifact count, and its backside gives you a sneaky way to drain out stalled games. It's removal, synergy, and inevitability packed into a single card. Number 123. Annoyed Altasaur. Pauper's strongest green bomb. 7 mana, 6/5 with Trample, Reach, and Cascade, providing you with some insurance against counter magic. Annoyed Altasaur helps stabilize or seize momentum. The Reach and Trample combination is relevant. It blocks flyers, pushes through damage, and closes games fast once the board is stable. Anyone who's played Green Monstertron knows the fun of casting this and cascading into Generous Ent to create a threatening board state out of nowhere. Number 122. Chromatic Star and Chromatic Sphere. Tron, Affinity, Kuldotha shells, and even some 5-color control lists all rely on these eggs for the same reason. Perfect mana smoothing at essentially 0 tempo cost. Both fix colors, replace themselves, and feed graveyard synergies, but Star has the extra perk of drawing a card when it goes to the graveyard, enabling sacrifice engines in a way Sphere can't quite replicate. Both remain important pieces in Tron decks today in both Pauper and Modern. Number 121. Crypt Rats. This creature is one of Black's most dangerous tools in Pauper, a scalable board wipe on legs. It can clear the entire battlefield at instant speed, while also threatening to finish off an opponent who's low on life. Against go wide strategies, this is a 1-card panic button. Give Crypt Rats lifelink and or death touch with effects like toxin analysis, and things get crazy. Its only real limitation is access to black mana, since you must pay black for each point of damage, but in practice that's not much of a drawback in the decks that play it. Number 120. Gurmag Angler. For years, Gurmag was the biggest, most efficient threat in Pauper. a 5/5 that routinely cost 1 mana thanks to Delve, trading cheap cantrips, discard, and removal for your opponent's resources while you built toward a 1 mana monster was a brutally effective tempo plan. Even after newer threats emerged, the Angler remains a benchmark for efficiency at common. Number 119, Tolarian Terror, a potent successor to Gurmag Angler. One of the strongest threats Pauper has received in years, this creature immediately reshaped the metagame. The combination of cost reduction, a massive 5/5 body, and Ward 2 makes it extremely difficult to kill efficiently. Dimir Terror, Izzet Tempo, and Jeskai Control all use it as their primary finisher, leveraging cheap cantrips like Consider and Thought Scour, as well as interaction to make it cost 1 or 2 mana consistently. Once it's on the battlefield, Tolarian Terror outclasses almost everything in combat and punishes decks that rely on targeted removal. Number 118, Arbor Elf. This mana dork becomes absurd when paired with lands that tap for multiple mana. In formats like Modern and Pauper, it has famously untapped Utopia Sprawl Enchanted Forests to generate fast bursts of mana. This makes Arbor Elf one of the most important cards in Gruul ramp decks in Pauper. Number 117, the Depletion lands. This cycle, including lands like Hickory Woodlot and Sandstone Needle, is one of the strangest but most powerful mana accelerants available at common. They enter with 2 depletion counters and produce 2 mana at a time until they run out of counters, making them essentially Lotus lands that sacrifice long-term stability for short-term explosiveness. Combo decks, Storm Shells, and Quirky Brews have always been interested in them because they enable big early plays. They're fragile, they're temporary, but they're some of the highest octane commons available. Number 116, Land Grant. One of the most iconic free spells in Green's history, this card allows you to fetch a forest as long as your hand is empty of lands. Free spells are usually dangerous, and this one sees play in aggressive strategies that want perfect mana sequencing without sacrificing tempo. Legacy Infect famously used it to keep low land hands and still function, and various combo decks have used it to thin mana bases while maintaining pressure. Crucially, it doesn't have to be a basic forest, meaning that you can tutor for jewel lands, etc. Casting it for free turns on spell count synergies, and even at 2 mana, it's flexible fixing that thins the deck. In Pauper, this is used in the 5-land Spy combo decks to virtually increase their land count. Number 115, Songs of the Damned. This ritual is a very narrow but incredibly strong black mana engine. It generates mana equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard, which means that in the right deck, it produces 5, 7, or even 10 mana for just a single black. Pauper Reanimator lists, Tortured Existence shells, and combo decks like Cycling Storm love it because of the massive burst of mana it enables. It's unassuming, but in the right graveyard strategy, Songs of the Damned is genuinely explosive. It becomes a kind of late-game black high tide. Big turns happen once it resolves. Number 114, Ether Spellbomb. Flexibility is everything, and this artifact offers 2 extremely relevant modes: a cheap bounce effect and a cycling option that replaces itself. In Pauper, Affinity, Jeskai Ephemerate, and artifact-based control lists run it because it fits perfectly into flicker loops, artifact density requirements, and low-cost interaction packages. It helps answer large creatures, protects your own threats, and ensures that your artifact synergies stay consistent. It's never the flashiest card in a deck, but it's a reliable utility piece. The Spellbomb continues to show up in modern artifact decks too. Typically as a one-of Silver Bullet to tutor up with Urza's Saga. Number 113, Spellstutter Sprite. This creature is both a threat and a counterspell, a rare combination at common. In decks built around fairies, especially blue-black and mono-blue tempo, the sprite becomes a hard counter that also leaves behind a 1/1 flyer. With support from Ninja of the Deep Hours, it scales even further, bouncing back to hand to be deployed again later. The sheer tempo swing of countering a spell while developing your board makes it one of the most feared blue commons in the game. As a result, while fairies may not be the dominant force they once were, Spellstutter Sprite remains a terror in Pauper. In a meta where losing a single key spell can pretty much doom you, Spellstutter remains indispensable. Number 112, Experimental Synthesizer. This artifact is one of the crown jewels of modern Pauper design. Not only does it provide impulsive card advantage on ETB, it also offers another impulse trigger when it leaves the battlefield, which creates disgusting loops with Core Skyfisher, Glinthawk, and Sacrifice engines. Boros Value and Kuldotha red decks used it to churn through cards at a pace most common legal strategies cannot match. Few 1-mana artifacts have generated more raw card velocity in Pauper's history. Synthesizer turns on prowess, supercharges Metalcraft, feeds Boros midrange, and once upon a time made Deadly Dispute feel like a mythic in disguise. Bounce it, flicker it, sacrifice it, every line of play squeezes value. Number 111, Lava Dart. This spell is a masterpiece of efficiency. 1 damage at instant speed for 1 mana looks small, but the flashback, sacrificing a mountain, means aggressive decks get 2 removal spells for very little mana investment. In Modern, it remains a key part of prowess strategies, letting you trigger multiple non-creature synergies while clearing the board of small creatures. 2 spells, 2 pings, 2 triggers for Kiln Fiend and the prowess squad, or 2 spells for Quarry Steel Cutter's Flurry. In Pauper, Lava Dart fills a very similar role in hyper-aggressive red decks, enabling devastating early turns and punishing 1 toughness creatures. Tempo decks love it because any spell that plays twice is already above rate. Number 110, Underdark Explorer. Most of the initiative cards are banned in Pauper because of how much overwhelming value the mechanic can provide. For 5 mana, 4 of which is generic and splashable, Underdark Explorer gives you the initiative on a respectable 5/3 body with menace. Being tough to block is very useful for winning the initiative back if you lose it. Number 109, Bonder's Ornament. For a time, this artifact was one of the defining colorless engines in Pauper. Any deck that could afford 3 mana for a mana rock used it to ramp, fix colors, and most importantly, draw cards in the late game. Control decks, Tron variants, and slow mid-range lists loved it because it meant you drew 2 cards per turn cycle. Its eventual banning in Pauper tells you everything you need to know about its power level. Universal mana fixing plus repeatable card draw is simply too much for a common. Number 108, Wild Nacatl. Though it's been largely outclassed in recent years, Wild Nacatl was a competitive staple for a solid decade. It was even banned in Modern for a few years. This 1 mana 3/3 requires a bit of deck building, but zoo lists in that format, as well as Legacy and to a lesser degree Pauper, easily meet those requirements thanks to jewels and fetch lands. Once online, the Nacatl serves as an incredibly efficient early game threat. In any aggressive Naya shell, it was long the premier turn 1 play, hitting harder than almost anything else while demanding very little investment. Number 107, Ghostly Flicker. One of the most infamous blue engine pieces in Pauper history, this spell is the core of multiple infinite loops or pseudo-infinite value chains. By flickering 2 permanents, usually Archaeomancer, Mnemonic Wall, or lands, it enables engines that generate card advantage, board presence, and mana all at once. Tron and Familiar's decks weaponize it to create scenarios where they can't realistically lose the game. Even outside combo loops, Ghostly Flicker protects key creatures from removal and re-triggers ETB effects for huge value. It's a cornerstone of blue-white Familiar's decks in Pauper. Number 106. Negate. For control decks across nearly every format, this is one of the most dependable 2-mana answers ever printed at common. Countering any non-creature spell gives blue decks a clean way to fight planeswalkers, sweepers, removal, burn, and many combo pieces. In Pauper, it's a critical tool for Izzet, Dimir, and Jeskai lists that want to protect a board state or shut down swingy spells. It's not flashy, but it's very efficient, and its flexibility keeps it relevant from standard all the way to modern. Number 105. Thought Scour. This cantrip has quietly enabled some of the most powerful graveyard strategies in Magic. Drawing a card while milling yourself for 2 fuels delve creatures like Gurmag Angler as well as Tolarian Terror, powers up spells like Treasure Cruise, and turns on reanimation lines or threshold interactions. In formats like Modern, Thought Scour turbocharges decks that rely on cheap card velocity, and in Pauper it's one of the sharpest tools Dimir and Izzet tempo lists have for hitting early cost reduction. It's deceptively simple, but milling yourself while replacing the card is the kind of micro advantage that snowballs in any spell-dense strategy. Number 104. Ethereal Armor. Few auras at common scale as violently as this one. In Boggles and aura-based aggro strategies, it's the primary payoff that turns a harmless hexproof creature into a 2-turn clock. First Strike matters enormously, it lets your suited-up creature dominate combat. However, the real power comes from how easily these Boggles decks rack up enchantments between Rancor, Cartouche of Solidarity, and various protection auras. It's not an exaggeration to say that Ethereal Armor is the main reason aura decks exist in Pauper at all. Number 103. Speaking of Boggles decks, this is arguably the strongest aura ever printed at common. Apparently, this was due to a printing error. The story goes that Rancor was supposed to cost 2 mana. 1 green mana for +2/+0 and trample would already be solid, but coming back to your hand when it dies makes Rancor a relentless problem that removal can't permanently solve. Every creature becomes a threat, every trade becomes card neutral, and every top-decked 1-drop suddenly represents lethal damage in short order. Stompy, Boggles, Gruul aggro, they all treat Rancor as one of the best ways to push damage through stalled boards. It's a deceptively simple card that solves 2 classic aura problems: loss of card advantage and lack of evasion. Number 102. Boarding Party. This creature represents the era where Pauper suddenly gained access to big cascade threats. 6 mana is trivial for ramp decks and Tron, and haste means you get immediate impact even if it dies fairly quickly. The real value though is the free spell, especially in decks where your curve is tailored so that Cascade always finds removal, a mana piece, card draw, or another threat. In this sense, Boarding Party is kind of like a more costly Bloodbraid Elf. Gruul midrange, Jund ramp, and even some blue-red shells have used it to create huge tempo swings, stabilizing the board while applying pressure. It's one of the cleanest top-end finishes for decks that want guaranteed value and can afford to pay for it. Number 101. Avenging Hunter. 5/4 with trample is already powerful, but taking the initiative on ETB is an outrageous amount of value. The initiative's built-in dungeon progression gives you card advantage, burn, or +1/+1 counters just for maintaining board presence. Venturing through the Undercity in Pauper often feels like cheating. Each step through the dungeon is essentially a free spell. In other words, few commons apply pressure quite so explosively. Mid-range green decks, Gruul stompy lists, and multicolor ramp strategies all adopted Avenging Hunter as a must-answer threat, because if it survives even a single turn cycle, the advantage it can produce can easily become insurmountable. Number 100. Ancestral Mask. In aura-based strategies, this is the nuclear option. While Ethereal Armor grows based on your enchantment count, this aura scales with every enchantment on the battlefield, including your opponent's. and the buff is a hefty +2/+2 for each enchantment rather than the usual 1. That makes it terrifying in Boggles decks. The more the game progresses, the more Ancestral Mask turns a harmless hexproof body into something swinging for 12, 15, or even 20 damage. It's a classic Pauper finisher. When Mask shows up, someone is usually dead the next turn. Number 99. Nile Spellbomb. 1 mana Grave Hate that can replace itself if you pay 1 black. This artifact is a model of clean, efficient graveyard hate, cheap, and asymmetrical. It exiles a graveyard for a single mana, perfect against Delve, Reanimator, Tortured Existence, or any deck leaning on recursion. But what elevates it above most other common graveyard hate is the flexibility. Black decks can cash the Spellbomb in for a card, meaning it's never a dead draw. Control decks, mid-range lists, and even affinity variants all rely on this as the best graveyard interaction that doesn't cost a slot in your spell suite. It's low opportunity cost, high impact, and one of the most important sideboard cards in Pauper. Number 98. Cast Down. This is a very efficient removal spell. 2 mana, instant speed, and the ability to hit almost every relevant creature in Pauper makes it pretty much the default kill spell for decks like Blue-Black Control, Dimir Terror, and various mid-range shells. The legendary clause usually doesn't matter. Nearly all of Pauper's important threats are non-legendary, which means this spell plays closer to Terminate than anything else. That said, the number of Pauper legal legends has been increasing, meaning that Cast Down's power might be watered down in the years to come. For now at least, when you want a clean answer that usually trades up in mana and keeps the board clear, this is the gold standard. Number 97. Ninja of the Deep Hours. This creature has been one of the defining engines of blue tempo decks in Pauper for a very long time. Ninjutsu allows it to convert early chip damage from 1-drops like Fairy Seer or Fairy Miscreant into repeatable card draw, turning every successful combat step into a miniature curiosity. It's a snowball card. Connect once and you start pulling ahead, connect twice and the game starts slipping away from your opponent entirely. Blue-black ninjas, mono-blue tempo, and Delver style lists all treat Ninja of the Deep Hours as their primary source of long game inevitability. It's fragile but incredibly efficient. It turns tiny creatures into must-answer threats and invites a lot of shenanigans, like bouncing a creature with a juicy ETB trigger. Number 96. Glistener Elf. This 1-drop is the cornerstone of Infect strategies in Pauper and Modern. As a 1/1, it looks harmless, but the Infect mechanic turns every pump spell into lethal damage shockingly fast. Groundswell, Vines of Vastwood, Mutagenic Growth, and Rancor all become pseudo-fireballs when paired with this creature. Infect is a deck defined by razor-thin margins and explosive turns, and Glistener Elf is the fuse that makes it all possible. If it survives for a single turn cycle, the opponent is already in danger. Number 95. Mutagenic Growth. Free spells are usually dangerous, and this is a great example of that. +2/+2 at instant speed for 0 mana by paying life enables absurd blowouts in combat, and more famously, fuels Infect kills out of nowhere. But even outside Infect, Mutagenic Growth shows up as a free protection spell, a pseudo-combat trick in red decks even, and a tempo tool in Prowess and Blitz shells. Any spell that affects combat while leaving your mana open is worthy of consideration, and this is one of the cleanest free interaction tools Common has ever received. Number 94. Nature's Claim. This is arguably the strongest artifact enchantment removal spell at Common for decks that don't care about life gain. 1 mana to blow up an artifact or enchantment at instant speed is a great rate, and the 4 life rarely matters in formats with fast clocks. Modern Infect, Tron, and various green mid-range shells rely on Nature's Claim for clean interaction, and Pauper green decks use it to snipe problem permanents like Journey to Nowhere, Nile Spellbomb, or opposing auras. Number 93. Refurbished Familiar. Refurbished Familiar quickly became a Pauper staple because of how neatly it packages low effective cost, built-in card advantage, and a meaningful evasive threat into a single slot. While the card technically costs 4 mana, affinity for artifacts means that in artifact-dense shells, it frequently hits the battlefield for a single black mana. It also reliably generates value the moment it resolves. Its ETB ability pressures the opponent by forcing a discard, but if their hand is empty, you instead draw a card, guaranteeing that you come out ahead no matter the situation. The card becomes even more oppressive when paired with synergistic effects. Blink spells let you repeatedly trigger its ability, steadily stripping away the opponent's resources. Bounce interactions, whether through Glinthawk, or Skyfisher, or Ninja of the Deep Hours, allow Refurbished Familiar to be picked up and replayed for additional disruption. Meanwhile, recursion tools like Blood Fountain ensure it can keep coming back from the graveyard to continue the grind. Unlike earlier discard creatures in the same lineage, Refurbished Familiar also presents a respectable body. A 2/1 flyer applies steady pressure, pecking away at life totals while interfering with opposing plans. Number 92. Breath Weapon. This instant speed red sweeper is a key defensive tool for decks that need to survive early pressure. 2 damage to each non-dragon creature wipes out almost every aggressive start in Pauper: goblins, stompies, fairies, tokens. Blue-based Tron decks with a red splash rely on Breath Weapon to stabilize against fast creature strategies, buying time to assemble their late-game engines. The fact that its instant speed makes it even more brutal, often turning an opponent's Alpha Strike into a disastrous blowout. Since Pauper doesn't have many true board wipes, any functional one becomes incredibly valuable. Breath Weapon hits nearly everything that needs hitting, and occasionally cleans up after your creatures bounce off the opponents in combat. When you need the battlefield swept clean right now, this is as reliable as it gets. Not to mention, there are few small dragons, meaning its non-dragon claws is seldom a problem. Number 91. Deadly Dispute. This instant generated so much value that it quickly became a Pauper staple and a problem, eventually eating a ban. Sacrificing a cheap artifact or creature, usually a blood token, Ica Wellspring, or experimental synthesizer, to draw 2 cards and make a treasure token is an impressive rate. Deadly Dispute fuels sacrifice decks, turbocharges black midrange, and enables greedy multicolor mana bases thanks to the treasure. The fact that it effectively refunds half the mana by creating a treasure is what breaks parity and lets it outpace opponents in value. Few commons have been banned as quickly or as justifiably. Outside of Pauper, Dispute continues to see play in Pioneer in Golgari sacrifice decks. Number 90. Rhystic Study. Originally printed at common, currently priced like a mythic. Rhystic Study is the definition of a commander powerhouse. Taxing every spell slowly turns into drawing you multiple extra cards per turn cycle, and decks that go long, like control shells, mid-range value piles, and some blink strategies, treat Rhystic Study as their premier source of card advantage. Often, the real power is psychological. Opponents think they can afford to pay the tax, but over time they always fall behind. It's not great in 1v1, but goes crazy in multiplayer. Not for nothing, Rhystic Study appears in a whopping 23.7% of all commander decks on EDHREC. Number 89. Stirring Bard. This was one of the cleaner, cheaper ways for red mid-range decks to take and hold the initiative in Pauper without committing to heavier green payoff creatures like Avenging Hunter. The defensive body made Stirring Bard good at blocking and keeping your opponent from taking the initiative. Likewise, its activated ability gives another creature menace and haste until end of turn. This is useful for taking the initiative back if an opponent has stolen it. Eventually, the card was considered too strong for Pauper and banned alongside a handful of other initiative cards. Number 88. Stinkweed Imp. This creature is a famous roadblock and an exceptional self-mill tool. As a blocker, it trades with anything, even massive creatures, thanks to its pseudo-death touch. But Dredge 5 is the real prize. This is the second highest dredge value in the game, surpassed only by Golgari Grave Troll. For that reason, Stinkweed Imp is a core staple in modern dredge decks, providing the raw milling power needed to find win conditions. On top of that, Tortured Existence decks, graveyard, combo shells, and reanimation strategies use this card to load the graveyard at an incredible rate, enabling delve threats, Song of the Damned bursts, or recursive soft lock loops. Any deck that wants its graveyard stocked treats Imp as both engine and enabler. Number 87. Unearth. For only 1 mana, Unearth can bring back powerful cheap threats like Monastery Mentor, Ranger Captain of Eos, or Psychic Frog, effectively cheating on the mana curve. In addition, the cycling mode ensures that it's never dead. There's very little opportunity cost to running Unearth. It's cheap, flexible, and perfect for decks built around ETB effects. In Pauper, value-focused mid-range decks, Grixis control shells, and even some aggro strategies use Unearth to rebuy their best ETB creatures. The card likewise sees solid play in Legacy, Modern, and Pre-Modern. Number 86. Ornithopter. A 0-mana 0/2 doesn't look powerful, but in the right decks, this is a combo piece, a ritual, and a storm enabler disguised as a creature. Any deck that wants artifacts in play for free gets a surprising amount of mileage out of this little flyer. Affinity shells treat it as a free artifact count booster, enabling Metalcraft, cheap Frogmites, and early full power Galvanic Blasts. Kuldotha Red used it as sacrifice fodder for Kuldotha Rebirth, turning a 0-mana body into 3 tokens. Equipment decks love Ornithopter as an evasive carrier, often strapping Colossus hammers to it. Plus, because it has flying, it's also an ideal target for ninjutsu. You can attack with the Ornithopter, and if it's not blocked, return it to your hand to put a powerful ninja like Yuriko directly onto the battlefield. Number 85. Burning Inquiry. A high variance draw effect. This sorcery is chaotic by design, but strategically powerful in the right hands. Storm and Graveyard decks use it as a way to fill the yard quickly while digging for combo pieces. In Modern, it famously powered early Hollow One strategies, enabling explosive openings. The randomness hurts your opponent as well, and when your deck is built to exploit the discard, the symmetry plays to your advantage. Number 84. Fire and Ice. This split card is one of the most flexible pieces of interaction ever. One side is a great removal spell and occasional 2-for-1. The other is a tempo cantrip that taps down lands or blockers, or buys a full turn against aggressive decks. Jeskai and Izzet decks treat this as the perfect early game glue card. It kills small creatures, it cycles, it delays attacks, and always trades at a positive rate. Even when both halves are modest, the ability to choose between 2 highly different effects makes this spell perform far above normal common power level. Number 83. Sakura Tribe Elder. This creature is the gold standard for fair, reliable, efficient ramp. 2 mana for a rampant growth stapled onto a body that can chump block before sacrificing itself is an incredible package. Green, mid-range, ramp, and some Tron adjacent strategies love it because it fixes mana and provides a small buffer against early aggression. Its ability to sack at instant speed also plays beautifully around removal or combat tricks. Even after nearly 2 decades, Sakura Tribe Elder remains one of the best ramp commons in the game. Number 82. Cranial Ram. This card is one of the scariest artifact-focused commons in years, so much so that it was preemptively banned in Pauper out of fear that it would make Affinity borderline unbeatable. It delivers both an immediate board presence and a massive offensive upgrade in one package. The ram's living weapon ability means that when it enters, it brings along a 0/0 germ token, pretty much already equipped, sidestepping the usual tempo loss that comes from needing to spend extra mana to attach equipment. Where the card truly shines is in how dramatically it scales. The equipped creature receives +X+1, where X is equal to the number of artifacts you control. In affinity-style decks packed with artifact lands, tokens, and cheap artifacts, this bonus can quickly balloon into a huge power increase, often adding 7, 10, or even more damage potential for only 2 mana. Then, even if the original germ token is removed, the threat doesn't disappear. The equipment sticks around, ready to be attached to another creature, perhaps a small evasive body like Ornithopter, turning it into a fresh, must-answer attacker and keeping pressure on the opponent deep into the game. In this regard, Cranial Ram is a clear tribute to Cranial Plating. Unlike Plating, it demands both red and black mana to cast, making it less universally splashable. It also lacks the instant speed reattachment that once made blocking against Plating so precarious, though the living weapon does a lot to compensate for all this. Number 81. Galvanic Relay. Galvanic Relay was an attempt at a balanced storm spell at common, though it soon proved too strong for Pauper and was banned. It's 3 mana for a kind of impulse draw effect that storms. Red-based storm shells have used this to chain rituals, cantrips, and cheap spells into back-breaking follow-up turns, effectively guaranteeing a kill or overwhelming value. It's unique because it rewards you for a big setup turn, rather than requiring one gigantic lethal turn immediately, a subtle shift that made storm decks far more resilient. Number 80. Sojourner's Companion. Sojourner's Companion is a power-crept version of Mernforcer. It serves 2 roles, as a cheap 4/4 body to close out games, as well as a way to fix your mana, particularly in the early game, thanks to its artifact land cycling. Released in Modern Horizons 2, it was part of the wave of artifact payoffs that pushed Pauper Affinity into near Tier 0 territory before bans reined things in. Number 79. Galvanic Discharge. This spell is one of Red's cleanest removal tools at common, most often seen these days in Boros energy decks in Modern. It offers scalable removal. On casting, you gain 3 energy counters, and can choose to spend any amount of your total energy to deal that much damage. This allows it to function as a strangle at instant speed, but with the potential to kill much larger threats later in the game. Importantly, any energy not used to kill a target is stored. For example, if you use your first Galvanic Discharge to kill a 1 toughness creature, you can bank the remaining 2 energy. Your next Galvanic Discharge will then have 5 total energy available to deal 5 damage for just 1 mana. In other words, Discharge acts as both a removal spell and an energy ritual, fueling other powerful cards like Guide of Souls and Wrath of the Skies. Number 78. Aarakocra Sneak. Yet another cheap initiative enabler. 4 mana is low for this effect, so decks using fast mana like Dark Ritual could cast Aarakocra Sneak as early as turn 1 or 2. The body is more solid than it looks as well. With a 1/4 stat line, the Sneak is difficult to remove with most burn spells. In addition, having flying means it can block opposing flyers to protect your initiative, or fly over ground blockers to take the initiative back if an opponent steals it. Blue-white midrange, Jeskai value piles, and Flicker shells all used the Sneak because it both stabilized the board and started generating resources immediately, necessitating its ban from Pauper in 2022. Number 77. Disciple of the Vault. This 1-drop was a terror in Mirrodin block standard, and is now considered too strong for Pauper. It rapidly drains life when paired with artifact sacrifice effects like Atog or Arcbound Ravager. In formats where artifact lands are legal, Virtually every permanent in a deck, including the mana base, can trigger the Disciple if destroyed or sacrificed. Affinity, Aristocrats-style sacrifice decks, and combo shells that churn through artifact tokens can all turn Disciple of the Vault into a repeatable drain engine that ends games even through stalled boards. Even a single Disciple can easily represent 6 to 10 life lost over the course of a game with surprisingly little effort. Historically, it's been part of multiple infinite combos, especially in modern and older formats. On top of that, Disciple triggers whenever any artifact controlled by any player goes to the graveyard, so it can also wring value out of your opponent's treasures, etc. Number 76. Muldrifter. Few commons are as universally beloved as Muldrifter. Evoke it, blink it, or let it stay. However you cast it, this divination on a stick draws cards and leaves behind real value. 3 cards for 5 mana, 2 from drawing, 1 from the body, is already excellent, but the evoke mode gives it amazing flexibility, giving it value earlier in the game, and also synergizing perfectly with blink and reanimation effects. In Pauper, Jeskai Ephemerate, Tron, and Familiars have all built engines around flickering this creature repeatedly, turning every iteration into another card advantage avalanche. It's simple, it's flexible, and it's the single most iconic ETB card draw creature in common history. Number 75. Atog. For years, this creature was the beating heart of Affinity's wildest kills. Sacrificing artifacts to pump itself by +2/+2 each time allowed Atog to become a 10/11 or larger in a single turn, often with Fling or Temur Battle Rage ending the game immediately. Even though it's fallen off in some formats due to bans and speed changes, its historical impact is undeniable. Atog turned artifact tokens, lands, and cheap trinkets into raw damage output. At its peak, this creature turned Affinity into one of the scariest glass cannon aggro decks in Pauper. Number 74. Temporal Fissure. This card is one of the most infamous win conditions in Pauper history. A 5-mana bounce spell sounds tame, but when paired with Storm, it becomes a one-sided board wipe pretty easily. Familiars and Cloudpost style control decks used to chain flicker loops, mana engines, and cheap cantrips to generate enormous storm counts, then clear away many opposing permanents with this spell. The card was so effective at creating uninteractive, hour-long loops that it was eventually banned. Number 73. All That Glitters. All That Glitters was originally printed at Uncommon in Throne of Eldraine and quickly proved its strength, so it was something of a surprise when it got downshifted to Common in Commander Masters. It bears obvious parallels to Ethereal Armor and Ancestral Mask, except often faster than either and with wider applications, since it applies to artifacts as well as enchantments. In decks full of those card types, All That Glitters turns even a tiny creature into a massive threat. In Pauper Affinity, this becomes a 2-mana +7/+7 or better with shocking consistency, and because the deck naturally plays evasion and protection, the damage output is often hard to stop. It basically demands instant speed removal on sight. The card also functions as a game-ending payoff in Aura/Boggles shells. Players would often hold 1 or 2 copies of All That Glitters in their hand until the right window of opportunity opened in the late game, then cast it and kill the opponent in a single swing. Number 72. Fall from Favor. This card's release reshaped Pauper practically overnight. Blue decks suddenly had access to a 3-mana removal spell that not only locked a creature down, but also gave them the Monarch, an engine that produces constant card advantage turn after turn. The result was brutal. Izzet and Dimir control lists completely suffocated the format. Once a blue deck took the crown, it was very difficult to take it back through their removal and counters. The card was eventually banned for warping the metagame too heavily, and it remains one of the clearest examples of a too strong for common design. Number 71. Preordain. One of the cleanest, strongest cantrips ever printed, even in the shadow of Ponder and Brainstorm, earning Preordain a spot on even the modern ban list for several years. Scrying before drawing gives blue decks incredible agency over their early turns, smoothing mana, filtering dead cards, and digging toward key pieces. In Pauper, Dimir Terror, Izzet Tempo, Jeskai Midrange, and Mono Blue Aggro all lean on this as one of the strongest turn 1 plays. In Modern, Preordain is a mainstay of Izzet Murktide, Dimir Death's Shadow, Blue-Red Prowess, and landless Belcher decks, providing those strategies with strong card selection and consistency. Number 70. Ashnod's Altar. An incredibly strong sacrifice engine, this artifact turns creatures into bursts of colorless mana, enabling both fair value loops and unfair combo chains. While famously abused in Commander in several infinite combos, it has also powered Pauper brews built around Myr Retriever, Golem Foundry, and Artifact Recursion lines. Any deck that wants to convert expendable creatures into mana treats this as a core piece of their game plan. Even without infinite combos, the tempo and resource generation is outrageous for a common, letting you gain value out of creatures that would die anyway, etc. Number 69. Faerie Macabre. Faerie Macabre is a premier graveyard hate card because it offers free instant speed and nearly uncounterable disruption. Unlike many other options, its ability functions while it's in your hand, making it a hidden threat that opponents cannot see on the battlefield before they attempt a combo. This often leads them to commit resources to a graveyard combo they think is safe. In addition, because the exile effect is an activated ability, Macabre's effect cannot be stopped by traditional counterspells. It can only be countered by niche stifle effects that target abilities. Finally, the fact that this is a creature is relevant in certain strategies, meaning it can be fetched by creature tutors or contribute to your creature count for effects like Song of the Damned and Lotleth Giant. Number 68. Kuldotha Rebirth. This sorcery was the backbone of one of Pauper's most aggressive archetypes, Kuldotha Red, turning a cheap artifact, often Ichor Wellspring, a blood token, or even an Ornithopter, into 3 1/1 goblins for a single mana creates absurd early pressure. Combined with Goblin Bushwhacker, burn spells, and artifact synergies, this card can easily produce 6 to 9 power on turn 2. It's one of the most efficient common token makers ever, a perfect blend of wide board aggression and artifact-based synergy. It was banned from Pauper in 2025 after dominating the metagame. Number 67. Vicious Battle Rager. For just 4 mana, Vicious Battle Rager combines the initiative mechanic with a defensive body that creates a lose-lose situation for opponents. Casting this early with the likes of Dark Ritual and Culling the Weak is easy, hence its ban from Pauper. With a 1/5 stat line, the Battle Rager is a sturdy blocker that survives many burn spells. While it only has 1 point of power, it does have a useful high damage penalty. Whenever Vicious Battle Rager is blocked by a creature, that creature's controller loses 5 life. If it's blocked by more than one creature, the ability triggers once for each blocker, potentially causing massive life loss in a single combat phase. Your opponent's alternative is to let the Battle Rager punch through and hit their face, but that obviously wins you back the initiative if it's been lost. Number 66. Thraben Charm. This is one of the better modal spells available to white decks at common. You get Graveyard Hate, Enchantment Hate, and an answer to large creatures all rolled into a single card. The creature removal mode scales quickly in creature-based decks. It deals damage to a target creature equal to twice the number of creatures you control. In go-wide decks like White Weenie or token strategies, this can easily kill large threats for a very low cost. With even 3 creatures on the board, the charm can take out the likes of Primeval Titan. The card is strong enough to see competitive modern play, particularly in Boros Energy. Number 65. Weather the Storm. This is one of the most powerful anti-aggro tools in Pauper. Against Burn, it's devastating. A single copy can gain 6, 9, or 12 life with minimal setup, often undoing multiple turns of pressure. In Pauper, blue-green control shells, Tron, and decks with many cheap cantrips use it to survive long enough to establish dominance. Because it scales with Storm, you can cast a few spells at instant speed before firing it off, creating enormous life swings. The fact that the Storm copies are not technically cast means that the card is incredibly resilient against counterspells as well. All in all, it's meta-defining sideboard tech. While primarily defensive, Weather the Storm can also be a win condition when paired with cards like Marauding Blight Priest or Veto Thorn of the Dusk Rose. These creatures cause opponents to lose life whenever you gain life, essentially turning Weather the Storm into a green version of Grapeshot. Number 64. Springleaf Drum. This artifact is quietly one of the best mana fixes at common rarity. It's cheap, universally splashable, and fits into any deck that wants to turn bodies into colored mana. The fact that it doesn't cost tempo makes it perfect for hyper-efficient aggro and artifact-dense strategies especially. It synergizes particularly well with 0 mana creatures, letting you both play a creature and use the drum on turn 1. In modern Affinity and Hammer Time decks, Springleaf Drum is second only to Mox Opal in terms of its power as a cheap mana rock, which is saying something. In modern Affinity and Hammer Time decks, Springleaf Drum is second only to Mox Opal in terms of its power as a cheap mana rock, which is saying something. Number 63. Malevolent Rumble. Malevolent Rumble is a highly efficient utility spell from Modern Horizons 3 that provides card selection, graveyard enabling, and mana acceleration, all for 2 mana. It allows you to look at the top 4 cards of your library and pick any permanent to put into your hand. Unlike narrower spells that only find creatures or, say, lands, this can grab anything. Enchantments, artifacts, lands, or planeswalkers are all fair game. Any cards not chosen are then put directly into your graveyard. This makes Malevolent Rumble an ideal enabler for mechanics like Delirium, Threshold, or Escape, as it fills the yard while simultaneously finding a threat. As if that wasn't enough, the spell creates an Eldrazi spawn token that can be sacrificed for 1 colorless mana. This basically refunds half the casting cost. The 0/1 spawn token makes for a useful chump blocker too. All this has earned Malevolent Rumble homes in modern decks like Broodscale Combo, Eldrazi Ramp, Amulet Titan, and Yawgmoth. Legacy decks run it too, and it's very popular in Pauper across the board. Number 62. Utopia Sprawl. This enchantment is a fantastic and speedy ramp effect. If you enchant an untapped forest using mana from a different source, you can immediately tap that forest to get 2 mana back, effectively making the spell free on the turn it's cast. The mana fixing is great too. Sprawl allows green-based decks to easily splash for powerful cards in other colors. Importantly, the aura can enchant any land with the forest subtype, including shocklands and triomes, further increasing its fixing potential in 3-color plus decks. Number 61. Thoughtcast. Thoughtcast is the card advantage backbone of the Affinity archetype. In those decks, it's essentially 1 mana, draw 2 cards almost every time. It's a Pauper staple, providing the raw card advantage needed to outlast control strategies in that format. In Modern, its popularity fluctuates, but it remains a powerful tool for artifact-centric brews that need to churn through their library quickly, and it still performs well in Pinnacle Affinity today. Number 60. Gorilla Shaman. This creature has a mean activated ability. It destroys 0 mana artifacts for just 1 mana. This is incredibly strong against decks that rely on Ornithopter or other cheap artifacts like Mox Opals or Treasure, Blood tokens, Clue tokens. In formats with artifact lands, it's essentially a repeatable one-sided Armageddon. If you have more mana available, you can destroy higher CMC artifacts too, though that gets tough. In Pauper, Gorilla Shaman has repeatedly served as a meta-defining sideboard tool against Affinity, sometimes single-handedly dismantling boards for just a handful of mana. Slow but devastating, it's a quintessential silver bullet. Number 59. Expedition Map. This artifact is the cornerstone of every Tron deck, regardless of format. Being able to search for any of the Urza lands on demand means Tron can reliably assemble its 3-land engine without ever needing colored mana. Not for nothing, this card appears in almost 15,000 decks on MTG Top 8. Outside of Tron, the map is also great at searching for utility lands. Number 58. Snap. Snap is bounce that refunds your mana. Pick up a creature, untap 2 lands. In the right shell, it's functionally free and sometimes secretly a ritual. In Pauper, blue-based familiars and Tron shells exploit the untap clause to generate mana. Bouncing a cheap creature while untapping 2 lands effectively nets mana when those lands tap for more than 1. Even in fairer decks, Snap is a strong tempo play that resets blockers, clears large threats, and keeps pressure going. It can likewise be used to save your own creatures from removal or board wipes, or to reuse powerful ETB triggers by bouncing and recasting your own cards. Number 57. Spell Pierce. 1 mana to counter a non-creature spell unless the opponent pays 2 is brutal in fast formats, often trading up on mana and disrupting key turns. Tempo decks rely on Spell Pierce to protect their threats or stop removal, sweepers, and engines. This puts psychological pressure on your opponent. Just leaving 1 blue mana untapped can force them to play around the card, often delaying their most important spells by 2 turns, just to ensure that they have the mana to pay the tax. While Spell Pierce falls off in the late game, in the first few turns it's a premium, high-impact piece of interaction. Number 56. Galvanic Blast. Affinity's signature burn spell. Artifact-heavy decks almost always meet the Metalcraft condition by turn 2, turning this into Lightning Bolt's bigger cousin. In Modern and Pauper, the jump from 3 to 4 damage is significant, hugely increasing the number of threats this spell can kill. On top of removing mid-sized creatures, Galvanic Blast also frequently finishes games by delivering the final few points of damage to the opponent's face. When your strategy naturally fills the board with artifacts, this card is simply overpowered. Number 55. Arboreal Grazer. A 0/3 with reach for 1 mana that accelerates you by putting a land onto the battlefield and slows down aggressive starts with its beefy toughness. In Pauper, Tron, Green Ramp, and multicolor midrange shells lean on it to stabilize while jumping a turn ahead on mana. However, the Grazer truly shines in modern Amulet Titan decks. Paired with Amulet of Vigor, the land it puts into play untaps, which gets out of hand fast. In short, Arboreal Grazer advances your ramping game plan while buying you time by blocking small attackers. Number 54. Tormod's Crypt. Pure, efficient graveyard hate. 0 mana means the opponent always has to respect it, and sacrificing it to exile an entire graveyard instantly blanks so many strategies. Tormod's Crypt slots into any deck that needs sideboard interaction without touching the mana curve, though it's especially good in Affinity since it's a 0 mana artifact. Also, unlike Relic of Progenitus, Tormod's Crypt targets only a single player's graveyard. This is ideal for decks that use their own graveyard for value while wanting to destroy an opponent's resources. Number 53. Tribal Flames. In the right mana base, This sorcery is 2 mana, deal 5 damage. Domain Zoo strategies use it as a premium removal spell and finisher. In Modern, those decks run Triomes, Fetches, and Shocklands to unlock Tribal Flame's full potential, while the Pauper builds often get there with cheeky cards such as Nylea's Presence, an aura that grants the enchanted land all basic land types. Number 52. Generous Ent. This card is a perfect example of how powerful the land cycling mechanic can be in Pauper. 6 mana creatures aren't usually impressive, but when your finisher doubles as a cheap, reliable land finder, it suddenly becomes real glue for multicolor midrange and ramp shells. The 1 mana land cycling gives you early consistency, fixing your mana, while the 5/7 reach body becomes a legitimate stabilizer later in the game, and the food token provides welcome life gain. Plus, because it's a creature that puts itself directly in the graveyard for just 1 mana, Generous Ent is an ideal target for reanimation spells like Exhume or Animate Dead, or the mass reanimation of Living End in Modern. Number 51. Bojuka Bog. Bojuka Bog is a top-tier utility land because it provides powerful graveyard hate without costing a spell slot in your deck. Entering tapped is a small price to pay for exiling an opponent's graveyard on ETB. Plus, since it's a land, the effect can be tutored by the likes of Crop Rotation and Expedition Map, and it dodges most counters. Number 50. Unholy Heat. Without Delirium, Unholy Heat is fine, 2 damage for 1 mana, but with Delirium, 6 damage at instant speed to any creature or planeswalker is an outrageous rate. In Pauper, Izzet and Rakdos decks fill the graveyard naturally with cheap spells, making Delirium trivial, so Heat cleanly answers that format's huge threats like Tolarian Terror, Gomag Angler, and Avenging Hunter for just 1 mana. The card is strong enough to see significant play in Modern and Legacy too, where it can take out bombs such as Primeval Titan. In those formats, achieving Delirium is even easier, thanks to fetch lands and cards like Mishra's Bauble. All in all, Unholy Heat is prized by control and mid-range decks because its high damage ceiling allows it to trade up against large creatures. Number 49. Lorien Revealed. This spell sees play across Pauper, Modern, Legacy, and even Vintage. Lorien Revealed can cycle for lands to fix awkward hands, or be hard cast for a powerful draw effect. For 1 mana at instant speed, it can find any land with the island subtype, including Jewel Lands, Shocklands, and Triomes. In this sense, the card functions similarly to a tap land, but is better because it allows you to run fewer lands overall, increasing the density of impactful spells in your deck. In the late game, the full 5 mana mode draws 3 cards, giving control decks real staying power. In Pauper, Dimir Terror, Jeskai Ephemerate, and Blue-Black Control all treat this as a flexible, high-floor card that makes greedy mana bases consistent while still offering card advantage later. In addition, in higher power formats, Lorien Revealed can be pitched to pay for powerful free spells like Force of Will, Force of Negation, or Subtlety, despite holding a virtual land slot. The cycling also has applications in graveyard decks, fueling cards such as Tolarian Terror and Murktide Regent. Number 48. Cranial Plating. This equipment is one of the strongest offensive cards in artifact decks. In Pauper Affinity, it routinely gives +6/+0 or more, turning even a random 1/1 into a lethal clock. The attach at instant speed ability is particularly nasty, allowing Affinity to threaten surprise kills or shift the plating to an unblocked attacker mid-combat. Historically, this card was the reason Affinity dominated multiple formats, and in Pauper it remains the single most dangerous way to convert artifacts into raw damage, hence its ban there. Number 47. Ancient Stirrings. Ancient Stirrings provides efficient card selection for decks built around colorless permanents. Tron and artifact-heavy mid-range decks love it because digging 5 cards deep for a land, payoff creature, or critical engine piece drastically improves their consistency. In modern Tron, this was one of the pillars that made turn 3 Karn a routine play. Ancient Stirrings can also find utility lands or Amulet of Vigor, or either half of the Basking Broodscale Blade of the Bloodchief combo. Some builds of Lantern Control and Hardened Scales have used it as well. Number 46. Writhing Chrysalis. This creature is a masterpiece of value. For 4 mana, you get a 2/3 with Reach that creates 2 Eldrazi spawns on cast and gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you sacrifice an Eldrazi. Drop it on turn 4 and suddenly your next turn produces a shocking 7 mana, which means you're immediately jumping into enormous follow-ups like Annoyed Altasaur. The tokens can even be sacrificed immediately for mana, effectively making the card cost only 2 net mana. In addition, because the tokens are created when the spell is cast, not when Writhing Chrysalis enters the battlefield, you still get the 2 tokens even if Chrysalis is countered. By creating 3 bodies in one go, the card naturally protects itself against edict effects too. Then, once you've sacked the spawns, the Chrysalis grows to a 4/5 body. Unsurprisingly, this creature is a fixture of competitive Pauper, appearing in nearly 15% of all Pauper decks on MTG Top 8. Number 45. Manamorphose. At one point, this thing commanded a $20 price tag for a common. Why? Because a spell that fixes mana, adds to your storm count, replaces itself, and effectively costs 0 mana is very impressive. Manamorphose is one of the most important enablers across multiple formats, from Modern Storm to Pauper Prowess to red combo decks everywhere, because it gives decks absurd flexibility in sequencing. It smooths colors, triggers prowess, fills the graveyard, and keeps your hand full. Anytime a deck cares about volume of instants and sorceries rather than card advantage, this becomes an excellent tool. Number 44. Ephemerate. 1 white to flicker your creature, and thanks to Rebound, you get to do it again next turn, for free. Ephemerate is cheaper than similar effects like Momentary Blink or Cloud Shift, while offering twice the utility. The Rebound makes it truly ridiculous, allowing you to get a ton of value out of ETB and leaves the battlefield effects. In Pauper, decks using Muldrifter, Archaeomancer, or Refurbished Familiar can turn a single mana into multiple cards, multiple triggers, or entire value loops. In Modern, people like abusing Ephemerate in conjunction with the Evoke Elementals. On top of that, Ephemerate functions as a protection spell too by blinking a creature in response to removal. Number 43. High Tide. This blue instant is famous for enabling some of the oldest and most powerful combo decks in Magic's history. Doubling your island's mana output turns cards like Frantic Search, Cloud of Fairies, and Flicker Loops into massive bursts of mana, allowing Storm and Control combo decks to chain spells into unstoppable turns. This card dominated Extended for a while. Even now in Legacy, decks use High Tide to generate enough mana to cast a lethal Blue Sun Zenith or Brain Freeze on the opponent, often tutoring for these finishes using Cunning Wish. In Pauper, High Tide is banned outright. Number 42. Merchant Scroll. This is one of Blue's most efficient tutors, being able to fetch any blue instant, Snap, Counterspell, Giga Drowse, High Tide, you name it, gives control and combo decks an extraordinary degree of consistency. Obviously, the card scales with the power of the blue instants a format has access to. In Vintage, Merchant Scroll is so potent that it's restricted because it can fetch Power 9 level cards like Ancestral Recall or ubiquitous protection pieces like Force of Will. Number 41. Exhume. This sorcery is the linchpin of Pauper Reanimator. Exhume brings a creature back for everyone, perfect for decks that plan ahead and dump fatties early. 2 mana to return any creature from your graveyard to the battlefield can be pretty busted, especially when your deck is engineered to cheat out massive threats like Ulamog's Crusher. Yes, the opponent also gets a creature back, but that downside is manageable when your threat is a monster and theirs is a random 2/2. In Legacy, Exhume serves as additional redundancy alongside Reanimate and Animate Dead in Reanimator decks to ensure the combo consistently finds a turn 1 or turn 2 win. It's worth noting too that, unlike many similar cards, Exhume does not target a creature in your graveyard. This means if an opponent uses an effect to exile your intended creature in response, you can still choose a different creature upon the spell's resolution, including one you put into the graveyard while Exhume is still on the stack. Number 40. Priest of Titania. This creature is an exceptionally powerful mana engine. In elf decks, it's essentially a Gaia's Cradle on legs, producing 3, 4, 5 or more mana very easily. In combination with untappers like Quirion Ranger, Priest becomes outright absurd in Pauper Elves decks, in particular often generating combo turn levels of mana as early as turn 3. It's a big part of why that strategy can compete in the format. In Legacy, Priest of Titania is a core component of the Elf Ball archetype, used to power out fast Crater Hoof behemoths. The card can also be used for several infinite combos, like with Staff of Domination. Number 39. Snuff Out. A free spell that kills almost any creature at instant speed is exactly as strong as it sounds. Paying 4 life instead of mana makes this one of the best tempo tools Black has ever received at common. Pauper doesn't have days anymore, but Snuff Out still plays that same "you thought I was tapped out" game. The surprise factor is a big part of its appeal. Decks like Dimir Terror, Blue-Black Delver, and Rakdos Midrange love it because holding up mana becomes optional. You get to develop your board and answer threats in the same turn. Against fast decks, the life loss matters, but the tempo advantage is enormous. Similarly, Legacy decks like Death's Shadow happily use it to vaporize things like Ragavan and Murktide while advancing their game plan. Number 38. Delver of Secrets. Delver of Secrets provides an incredibly efficient clock for just 1 blue mana. It defines the tempo archetype, where a player drops a cheap, powerful threat and then spends the rest of the game disrupting the opponent to ensure that that threat finishes the job. For this reason, Delver is the namesake of one of Legacy's most dominant archetypes. These Delver decks typically run a high density of instants and sorceries, mostly counters and cantrips, which makes flipping the creature very consistent. The deck is considered the police of the Legacy format, as its combination of a fast clock and heavy disruption prevents degenerate combo decks from taking over. Number 37. Peregrine Drake. Peregrine Drake is one of the most famous cards with the Urza block free spell mechanic. These were cards that untapped your lands on resolution or ETB. The Drake is infamous for enabling infinite mana loops, including in Pauper. Untapping 5 lands on ETB is already explosive, but once you pair Drake with flicker spells like Ghostly Flicker and Ephemerate, and recursion creatures like Archaeomancer and Mnemonic Wall, you effectively produce infinite mana. This enabled Izzet Drake decks to play as control decks that could suddenly win with an infinite combo. Peregrine Drake becomes even more powerful if you control lands that produce multiple mana, such as Dimir Aqueduct or lands enchanted with Utopia Sprawl, as untapping them generates significantly more mana than you spent. Even outside combo loops, a 2/3 flyer that generates a burst of mana is extremely strong in ramp and value shells. Number 36. Relic of Progenitus. This is one of the strongest graveyard hate cards ever, capable of nuking all graveyards in one shot, while replacing itself by drawing you a card. The flexibility is what makes Relic elite. You can tap it to keep shrinking the opponent's graveyard turn by turn, or you can cash it in to exile everything at once. Because it costs only 1 mana and can be played in any deck, it's a near universal sideboard staple in multiple formats. Because you can basically just cycle it if you don't need it, Relic of Progenitus is solid in many main boards as well. Number 35. Chatterstorm. This spell was so dangerous it ended up banned in Pauper after just a few months. Chatterstorm allowed Storm decks to chain cantrips and rituals into up to 20 squirrel tokens on turn 3. These strategies rely on explosive mana acceleration to cast a massive Chatterstorm, frequently pairing it with First Day of Class to flood the board with an overwhelming swarm of creatures, ending the game immediately thanks to haste. Within the confines of Pauper's card pool, most archetypes lacked reliable tools to meaningfully disrupt the sequence once it began. Number 34. Empty the Warrens. Before Chatterstorm, this was the original token-based Storm finisher. Empty the Warrens provides a massive, non-targeted threat that is extremely difficult for many decks to answer. Importantly, it allows Storm decks to transition from a spell-based kill to a battlefield-based kill, which can overwhelm fair decks that have sideboarded out their creature removal in favor of counter magic or effects like Leyline of Sanctity. Plus, Empty the Warrens requires a lower storm count to be deadly than most other storm cards. Unlike Tendrils of Agony, which requires a storm count of usually at least 10 to be lethal, a small Empty the Warrens for a storm count of 5 or 6 is often enough to win a game over a few turns. Empty the Warrens continues to see competitive play in Modern and Legacy, and is banned in Pauper for the same reasons as Chatterstorm. Number 33. Grapeshot. The best of the common storm spells. Alongside rituals and cantrips, this spell routinely deals 15 to 25 damage in a single hit. Modern Storm has revolved around it pretty much since the format began, and even Pauper Storm lists used it to close out games before it got banned. Today, Grapeshot remains the win con of choice in modern Ruby Storm decks. On top of being a lethal finisher, it's also flexible removal. Unlike other Storm payoffs that only hit players, Grapeshot can target creatures too. This allows players to use it to clear early hate bears that would otherwise prevent the combo from working. And once again, the Storm mechanic itself is inherently resilient to counters. Because Storm creates copies of the spell on the stack, a standard counterspell only stops 1 damage from Grapeshot. An opponent would need something like Flusterstorm or Consign to Memory to shut down Grapeshot completely. Number 32. Invigorate. This pump spell is outrageous in Infect strategies. +4/+4 at instant speed for 0 mana, if you give your opponent life, is an unbelievable rate. And because Infect doesn't care about the opponent's life total, the drawback isn't a drawback at all. In Legacy Infect, this card routinely enabled turn 2 kills. That power level was considered too high for Pauper, earning it a ban. Number 31. Fire Blast. If you play Pauper or Legacy, you've probably been killed by Fire Blast. This spell is one of Burn's premier finishers. It's 6 mana to deal 4 damage to any target, but you can sacrifice 2 mountains rather than pay its mana cost. This makes it one of the most efficient spells in the game for converting resources into immediate damage. Indeed, Fire Blast keeps opponents perpetually on edge. The moment your life total drops to 4 or lower and the Burn player controls 2 mountains, you're never truly safe. Even if they appear completely tapped out, the threat of a sudden 0 mana burst of damage forces you to respect lethal at all times. Number 30. Cloud of Fairies. Urza Block strikes again. Cloud of Fairies is a functionally free creature that provides immediate tempo and acts as a key piece in several infinite mana combos. For 2 mana, you get a 1/1 flying creature and immediately untap 2 lands. This allows you to develop your board while keeping mana open for things like Counterspell or other instant speed interaction on your opponent's turn. Throw in bounce effects and lands that can produce more than 1 mana, and things can get out of hand fast. In the late game, when a 1/1 flyer is no longer useful, you can use Cloud of Fairies' cycling ability to discard it and draw a new card, ensuring that it's never a dead draw. Number 29. Balustrade Spy. This creature became infamous because it enabled one of the strangest all-in combo decks Magic has ever seen. In formats where you can build a deck with no actual lands, Balustrade Spy's ETB trigger mills your entire library at once, instantly fueling Dread Return and other combo payoffs. Even in formats where the oops all spells style is toned down, the Spy remains a powerful self-mill tool that dumps enormous chunks of your library straight into the graveyard. Number 28. Troll of Khazad-dûm. This creature is perhaps the best of the Lord of the Rings land cyclers. Swamp cycling for 1 mana lets you fix your mana, curve cleanly, and fuel graveyard synergies, all while later providing a massive 6/5 body with triple menace. In Legacy, Troll of Khazad-dûm was a self-contained combo piece because its cycling ability put it directly into the graveyard, setting up a turn 2 reanimate. As a result, this card fundamentally reshaped how reanimator decks were constructed in that format. It let players pack their lists with spells like Reanimate and Animate Dead without clogging their hands with oversized creatures that would otherwise be uncastable, or dedicating excessive slots to discard outlets just to stock the graveyard. By sidestepping those traditional trade-offs, the deck was able to blur the usual opportunity costs that keep these kinds of explosive strategies in check. Consequently, Reanimator decks with Troll were capable of playing a relatively interactive, fair game while constantly threatening a brutally unfair one. This was deemed unhealthy, and Troll of Khazad-dûm was banned from Legacy in March 2025. Number 27. Monastery Swiftspear. This is one of the best aggressive 1-drops of all time, and its head-scratching downshift to common in Double Masters 2022 proved way too strong for Pauper. Prowess, haste, and an aggressive shell around it turned red aggro into a format-defining juggernaut. Prowess turns every spell into extra damage, and decks like Izzet Blitz, Burn, and Prowess shells exploit that by chaining cheap cantrips, rituals, and pump spells to turn this seemingly small creature into a 4, 5, or 6 power attacker. The combination of haste and snowball potential makes Monastery Swiftspear a nightmare for control decks. Number 26. Violent Outburst. Violent Outburst has been a central piece of Cascade combo decks, most famously Living End and Crashing Footfalls. What sets it apart from the other Cascade enablers is the fact that it's an instant. Casting it on your opponent's end step allows you to untap next turn and attack, and it lets you protect the combo with a 0 mana Force of Negation if necessary. Violent Outburst pushed Cascade decks to the top of the modern metagame, resulting in a ban in 2024. Number 25. Mystic Sanctuary. This land is an incredibly powerful recursion tool for blue decks. It lets you put any instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. In formats like Modern, Mystic Sanctuary can be used for a near-infinite loop. A player can cast Cryptic Command to counter a spell, and choose the mode to return a permanent to its owner's hand, targeting their own Mystic Sanctuary. On the next turn, the player simply replays the Sanctuary to put the Cryptic Command back on top of their library, ensuring they can counter a spell every single turn. Additionally, since Mystic Sanctuary is an island, you can grab it with fetch lands at instant speed, making it incredibly versatile. The power level was high enough that it got banned in both Pauper and Modern. Number 24. Simian Spirit Guide. a free mana ritual stapled to a creature that never hits the battlefield. Exiling Simian Spirit Guide from your hand gives you 1 red mana, enabling hyper-fast openings in combo decks, allowing turn 1 plays that would otherwise be impossible. It fueled Modern Ad Nauseam, Living End, Belcher variants, and several legacy Glass Cannon decks, among many others. Wizards eventually decided these combo decks were too fast, so they banned Simian Spirit Guide from Modern in 2021. Number 23. Dread Return. A key piece in Dredge, Oops All spells, and similar strategies. This reanimation spell is notorious for enabling degenerate combo turns. Reanimating a creature for 0 mana by sacrificing 3 creatures is exactly what graveyard decks want, especially when they're generating disposable bodies from cards like Narcomoeba, Prized Amalgam, or Bridge from Below. Because Dread Return can be cast from the graveyard, you never actually need to draw it. Decks that mill their entire library can use it to immediately return a game-winning combo piece. After milling the whole deck, players often use free creatures to pay the sacrifice cost and bring back a win condition like Thassa's Oracle or Angel of Glory's Rise. Due to its ability to enable consistent turn 1 or turn 2 kills in fast combo decks, the card is banned in Modern. Number 22. Basking Broodscale. This Eldrazi lizard from MH3 created several 2-card combos. Whenever a +1/+1 counter is placed on it, you create an Eldrazi spawn token. Those tokens can be sacked for mana. So, if you have an effect that places +1/+1 counters on the Broodscale whenever a creature dies, such as Blade of the Bloodchief or Sadistic Glee, the loop goes infinite, giving you endless counters, endless mana, endless ETB triggers, and endless death triggers. This combo serves as the centerpiece of a tier Modern deck, and proved so fast and resilient in Pauper that Broodscale was banned there. Number 21. Crop Rotation, one of the game's most powerful land tutors. This instant lets you trade a land for any other land in your library. In Tron, it finds missing Urza pieces. In other shells, it fetches utility lands like Bojuka Bog or Mystic Sanctuary. In Legacy, it enables combo lines with Dark Depths. The fact that it costs a single green mana and works at instant speed makes it wildly flexible. On top of that, it doesn't even force the land to enter tapped, as most effects of this kind do. While Crop Rotation may not generate card advantage, the tempo and precision it provides are unmatched. Number 20. Blue Elemental Blast and Red Elemental Blast. These two blasts remain some of the most efficient sideboard cards ever. 1 mana to counter or destroy a spell or permanent of the opposing color is fantastic, especially in formats where those colors dominate. In Pauper, Blue Elemental Blast is a nightmare for burn, while Red Elemental Blast gives red decks an incredible tool against blue-based control and tempo strategies. The blast's sheer efficiency makes them meta warping. Number 19. The Tron lands. Together, Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Power Plant have powered the Tron archetype across almost every format. Producing 7 mana from 3 lands is such an overwhelming boost that decks are built entirely around assembling this trio as quickly as possible. The mana advantage provided is so great that traditional fair decks usually can't keep up with the size and frequency of the threats being played. In Modern, the Tron lands let you cast Sire of 7 Deaths and Ugin Eye of the Storms on turn 4 or even 3. In Pauper, they enable massive threats like Maelstrom Colossus, endless flicker loops, or control engines that simply outscale everything else. Number 18. Counterspell. The original iconic no-nonsense answer. Even after 30 years, Counterspell remains the standard by which all other counterspells are measured. 2 blue mana, counter any spell. It's hard to overstate how strong that rate is. Unlike soft counters like Mana Leak or Spell Pierce, which an opponent can pay mana to ignore, Counterspell provides a definitive no. It allows you to trade up on mana, spending only 2 mana to shut down an opponent's far more expensive play. The card remains a major player in Legacy, Pre-Modern, Modern, and Pauper. Indeed, right now, Counterspell is literally the most played card in Pauper, appearing in a quarter of all decks on MTG Top 8. Number 17. Faithless Looting. One of the most format warping red spells of all time, so strong that it ended up banned in Modern for a few years. Looting trades raw card advantage for velocity and selection, digging deep into your deck while filling your graveyard with flashback spells, reanimation targets, or discarding for madness. The flashback is what makes it truly dangerous. While it technically puts you down a card, since you spend the spell plus 2 cards from your hand to only draw 2 new ones, looting's efficiency in specific strategies makes it a staple. For decks like Dredge, Arclight Phoenix, or Reanimator, discarding a card is often better than keeping it in hand. Putting a creature like Stinkweed Imp or Hogark into the graveyard effectively draws those cards for the purpose of their unique mechanics. This means that in those builds, Faithless Looting is card advantage in disguise. Number 16. Cloudpost. This land is the namesake of one of the game's best big mana strategies. The archetype uses Cloudpost, Glimmerpost, and Vesuva to generate absurd amounts of colorless mana. Scaling with the number of loci on the battlefield lets Cloudpost tap for 3, 4, 5, or more mana shockingly early. Pauper Cloudpost decks were once so dominant, casting haymakers far ahead of the curve, that the archetype was eventually dismantled by bans. Cloudpost is banned in Modern for similar reasons, though it remains a competitive force in Legacy. Number 15. Rite of Flame. One of the strongest red rituals. The first copy is good, the later copies are broken. Each one adds extra mana for every Rite of Flame in your graveyard, meaning Storm decks can use this to produce 3 or 4 mana. That said, even the baseline rate of 2 mana from 1 is good enough. It was a defining card in old Pauper Storm, and was powerful enough to earn a ban both there and in Modern. The card continues to see play in Legacy Storm decks today. Number 14. Seething Song. Seething Song turns 3 mana into 5, powering out huge haymakers, fueling big storm turns, or simply letting you cast a turn 2 or 3 through the breach. It was eventually banned in Modern due to its ability to turbocharge broken combo turns. In Legacy, Song is a staple in Ruby Storm and the Epic Storm. It generates the critical mass of mana needed to fuel Gifts Ungiven or Past in Flames loops before finishing with Grapeshot. The card also lends itself to some infinite combos. In EDH, for example, it's frequently used with Reiterate and a cost reducer, or bonus round, to create infinite red mana and infinite Magecraft triggers. Number 13. Lightning Bolt. The most iconic removal spell in the game. 1 mana, 3 damage. Efficient enough to kill early threats, finish games, and keep aggressive red decks competitive across every format. Bolt is the template by which all burn is measured, and after 3 decades it's still unmatched on rate. It allows you to trade up by killing a creature that cost your opponent 3 or 4 mana, giving you a massive tempo advantage. This means that in many ways, Lightning Bolt defines which creatures are playable in competitive formats. If a creature costs 3 or more mana and has toughness 3 or less, meaning it dies to Bolt, it's often considered a liability unless it provides immediate value. Alternatively, Bolt can finish off a weakened Planeswalker or be pointed at an opponent's face to win the game when they are at low life. All in all, just a remarkably clean design that has aged exceptionally well. Number 12. Ponder. This cantrip sits near the top of the best blue 1 mana spells of all time. Looking at 3 cards, choosing how to arrange them, and then optionally shuffling gives you an unparalleled level of control over your draws. Tempo decks, control decks, and combo decks all benefit from that flexibility. Brainstorm is generally considered better if you have a way to shuffle your library, as it lets you put bad cards from your hand back on top, but Ponder is better at looking deep for one specific card. Its banning in Modern speaks volumes about its power. Number 12. Arkham's Astrolabe. This innocent-looking snow artifact quietly broke multiple formats. The combination of fixing every color and drawing a card on ETB for a single mana gave control decks unprecedented consistency. Arkham's Astrolabe smoothed mana so absurdly well that 5-color piles became trivial, and because it replaced itself immediately, the opportunity cost was essentially 0. The card was so efficient that it led to good stuff piles, where every deck simply played the best cards from every color because the mana cost no longer mattered. This lack of deck diversity eventually led to it being banned in Modern, Legacy, and Pauper. And that's without even getting into the card's abusability with bounce and blink effects, etc. Number 11. Gitaxian Probe. A free spell that draws a card and gives you perfect information. That's a recipe for disaster. Probe became a fundamental tool in Delver, Infect, Storm, and Blitz variations across Pauper, Modern, and Legacy. Knowing when it's safe to commit to a combo turn, while simultaneously fueling graveyards and storm count, made aggressive and combo decks dramatically more consistent and safer. Even paying 2 life was a negligible cost. Probe is now banned in Modern and Legacy for a reason. 0 mana cantrips that reveal your opponent's hand are simply too strong. Number 10. Sinkhole. A 2 mana Stone Rain in black. In early Magic, this sorcery allowed black decks to shred opposing land development as early as turn 2. That kind of early mana screw was often enough to win games on its own. The card was a staple of old-school Suicide Black and Pox strategies, setting opponents multiple turns behind for minimal investment. It's the perfect example of early Magic's willingness to push land destruction far past modern design limits. Today, Sinkhole remains a key tool for resource denial decks in Legacy and Vintage, where the most powerful lands in the game's history are legal. Number 9. Treasure Cruise. This spell is the poster child for how dangerous Delve can be. In formats full of cheap cantrips, fetch lands, and looting effects, Treasure Cruise routinely costs just a single mana, becoming almost a build-dependent ancestral recall. This was so format warping that the card got banned in Pauper, Modern, and Legacy, as well as restricted in Vintage, though it remains fully legal in Pioneer, a format that can't fully harness its power. Number 8. Daze. A free counterspell that punishes opponents for tapping out is exactly the sort of tool tempo decks crave. Returning an island is a small cost when you're applying pressure with evasive threats like Delver of Secrets, and the ability to counter key spells without leaving mana open creates huge tempo swings. Daze allows you to tap all your mana to play a threat while still being able to protect it or disrupt your opponent's plays. While returning a land to your hand sets your mana development back, the tempo gained by stopping an opponent's key spell for 0 mana often outweighs the loss of a land drop. Additionally, the card enables mind games, bluffing, and a kind of mental tax for your opponent. Opponents are sometimes forced to wait until they have an extra mana available before casting their important spells, effectively slowing them down by a full turn just by the possibility of you having Daze in your hand. Number 7. Lotus Petal. 0 mana for a one-shot color of your choice, enables explosive openings, smooths awkward hands, and turns on storm and combo lines far ahead of schedule. Legacy Storm, Belcher, Oops All spells, and various artifact combo decks rely on Lotus Petal for speed and flexibility. The clearest evidence of Lotus Petal's strength is its sheer ubiquity. According to EDHREC, it's played in 7% of all Commander decks, and it appears in more than 51,000 decks on MTG Top 8. Number 6. The Mirrodin Artifact Lands. This is one of the most powerful land cycles printed at any rarity. Counting as artifacts means they supercharge affinity, enable metalcraft, and make spells like Thoughtcast, Galvanic Blast, and Frogmite dramatically above rate. In Mirrodin Block Standard, these artifact lands powered out cheap Broodstars and got fed to Arcbound Ravagers. They have been banned in Modern from the format's inception. They put in work in legacy archetypes like Artifacts Blue, and they remain cornerstones of Pauper, ensuring artifact decks are always tier 1. Number 5. Hymn to Turak. This discard spell is one of the most brutal 2-mana plays of all time. Forcing an opponent to discard 2 cards at random is devastating, completely shattering carefully planned sequencing. If Hymn hits essential lands, for instance, it can basically win games by itself. In early Legacy and Extended, this made it a pillar of black midrange and Pox-style decks, creating early card advantage swings that many opponents never recovered from. A turn 1 Dark Ritual into Hymn to Turak is still a strong turn 1 play in Eternal formats today. Number 4. Dark Ritual. Speaking of Dark Ritual, the Black Boon remains one of the greatest mana accelerators ever, so much so that it coined the term ritual to describe instants and sorceries that produce more mana than they cost. A single black mana producing 3 black is outrageous acceleration, the kind of swing that enables scary turn 1 threats, discard, and combo lines that would otherwise take multiple turns. Legacy Reanimator, Storm, Suicide Black, and countless brews all rely on Dark Ritual for super fast starts. In those archetypes, Dark Ritual provides the speed necessary to outpace interaction. That game plan has been winning games since the 90s and never stopped. Open on Ritual, land a game-ending threat like Hypnotic Spectre, and profit. Number 3. Frantic Search. This card is a perfect storm of dangerous designs, card selection, graveyard filling, and the big one, untapping lands. Because it basically costs 0 mana after resolution, Frantic Search becomes a ritual in decks with bounce lands, high tide engines, or mana synergies. Frantic Search was so abusable in combo strategies that it was banned in multiple formats, including Pauper and Legacy. When cast during your own main phase, it keeps your development on track. You can filter into threats like True Name Nemesis while still advancing your board. At the same time, because it operates at instant speed, you can simply pass with mana up, threatening interaction and casting Frantic Search on the opponent's turn if need be. The combination of instant timing and land untapping makes it a powerful tempo tool that rewards flexibility. That said, the card's defining strength is its graveyard fueling. Decks built around cards like Reanimate and Goblin Welder appreciate how efficiently Frantic Search stocks them with targets. Number 2. Gush. While Gush's printed cost is 5 mana, its alternative cost, returning 2 islands you control to your hand, is what makes it broken. It allows you to draw 2 cards for 0 mana at instant speed. You can also frequently mitigate the downside by tapping those islands first, floating mana before returning them, then perhaps replaying 1, a sequence that blunts or sometimes even negates the drawback entirely. Although it saw some play in Standard and Block, Gush's real impact was in Eternal formats. Psychotog builds transformed the influx of cards and recycled lands into lethal damage hits, while Turbo Stasis lists used it to rebuy islands, sustain stasis locks, and enable other alternate cost spells such as Foil. This efficiency proved too much to handle. Gush has long been banned in Legacy and Pauper, and it has moved on and off the Vintage restricted list over the years. Beyond tournament results, Gush also influenced deck construction theory. It rewarded lean mana bases and disciplined sequencing, reinforcing principles later associated with the Turbo Xerox philosophy, trimming lands in favor of velocity, cheap interaction, and card flow. The spell's depth is such that Stephen Menendian once devoted an entire 300-page book to analyzing it alone. Number 1. Brainstorm. Arguably the most skill-testing and format-defining cantrip in the entire game. In formats with shuffle effects, this card becomes a full-blown card quality engine. You can hide dead cards, dig for answers, fix clunky hands, and sculpt perfect turns. Even in Pauper, with fewer shuffle effects, Brainstorm is still a great spell for tempo decks, spell density strategies, and anything that needs instant speed selection. The sheer tactical flexibility of this card is unmatched. It's the spell that made cantrip sequencing an art form, and 3 decades later it still defines Blue's identity. Indeed, Brainstorm adds a layer of manipulation that alternatives like Ponder simply don't have. Its defining strength is the ability to take unwanted cards already sitting in your hand, like extra lands, redundant spells, or dead interaction, and place them back on top of your deck, and then shuffle them away with a fetch. And because it operates at instant speed, you can hold up interaction, gather information, and act at the most opportune moment. Basically, with shuffle effects available, Brainstorm effectively replicates everything Ponder offers while expanding your options. While these may seem like subtle things, they combine to make the card very powerful, perhaps the best common in the history of the game. That's all for today. Until next time, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon. And remember to use my discount code SerumVisions to get 5% off your first purchase through CardTrader 0.